guys, this is Janice with Needles and Fashion, and I'm here to bring you a tutorial featured on my blog, www.needlesandfashion.com. I will also be doing this tutorial in collaboration with Fabric Mart Fabrics. You'll be able to also see this post on www.fabricmartfabrics.com. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and go over the materials that you're going to need to construct this jumpsuit. The first thing you're going to need is your fabric, of course. I have a very lightweight coral linen fabric from Fabric Mart Fabrics. Beautiful. I got 3 yards for this project, and you're going to need just about all of it. So if you're a larger size, you might want to go ahead and go up to 3.5 or 4 yards, just to be sure you have enough and to accommodate any mistakes that you may make. So the second thing you're going to need is McCall's 6930. I know you guys are like, well, she always use 6930 or M6756. Well, these are patterns that I use for my pant slopers. I worked with them in the past, and it gives me a great fit. So this is a wide leg jumpsuit, so I drafted the pants from the shorts pattern. Now, I've done this a ton of times, and I'll put a link on the bottom of this video so that you can have access to the video that shows you exactly how I widen the legs and drape them down into a wide leg pants. So you're going to need a zipper. We're going to be inserting an invisible zipper on the side of this jumpsuit. You're going to need 2 buttons. Doesn't matter what color, and you pick a size that's comfortable for you. This one is about the size of a quarter, maybe just a bit smaller. Doesn't matter what color, because they're not going to be seen. It's going to be hidden under the front flap of the jumpsuit. So now that we've gone over the materials that we're going to need, let's go ahead and get started draping the top of this jumpsuit. This tutorial, you're going to need to drape your top. There's a couple different patterns out there that you can use to simulate the same thing, but I chose to actually drape this with muslin on my dress form. I went ahead and created a half body shape and cut the sides for my armhole, as you can see here. Once I determined my midpoint, I went ahead and cut that piece of the muslin off. I went ahead and draped the line from the top corner all the way down to the side. This is going to be where the peplum portion of your shirt is going to lie. So I did that all the way down to the end. You can see that here. The line runs from here, the corner, comes around just before the bust and down to the side. I'm going to be cutting that piece off in order to put the peplum piece on. So when you cut this off, you're going to have to add the seam allowance to your fabric piece once you cut it out. After I did that, I went ahead and created a piece to pin to this line. So I had started with a larger piece, but you can cut this down after you actually pin it on. So I just pin this right along this line. Right. So now that that's pinned, the objective of the way that this peplum piece flows, is that you're going to have a corner. You're going to have a straight corner at the top, and it's going to taper down to the end of your fabric. So if you have a long piece, you're just going to cut a straight line across the top. And this is about, let's see, this is about 7 inches across. And at the bottom, of course, it tapers off to the corner. So with 7 inches across, you're going to cut and just and slim it down all the way down to the bottom here. So that creates the front piece there. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of maybe 2-inch, a little bit more than 2-inch square for the top piece, which I've done here. And this extends from that midpoint to my peplum piece. At this point, I just pin this here. I need some more pins. Alright, so this is 2 inches, right? And the length is going to be determined by your midpoint and the end of your muslin that you created. The top, the side and the top of the 7-inch piece is going to attach here in the middle. So you have your front piece, which flows down to the side, and then you have your top piece. You're going to do the same exact thing for the back. You're going to have 2 pieces, front and the back, and then we're going to create a couple doubles of this peplum piece so that we can have a nice clean finish. I'm going to go ahead and take this off of the dress form. I'm going to transfer it to my fabric, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so in preparation for the actual pattern pieces I'm going to be cutting out using this muslin, I want to go ahead and make some facing because I want clean edges on this entire jumpsuit. So I want to measure around about 1.5 inches from the top, from the armhole here on the side. And I'm just going to bring this right on up. To the top. I'm going to do the same thing with the middle piece. I'm just going to use this piece for the top part of the peplum and just use that as a gauge, which is 2 inches. So I'm going to make a line here. That's my 2 inches. And I'm going to use this to cut out my facing pieces for the front, the back, and the sides. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and put this on my fabric and cut my pieces out with my seam allowance on the side of this piece here. And then the seam allowance for the bottom of the top, and then the top here. So I'm going to do that, transfer it over to the actual fabric, and then we'll be back to discuss what's next. Okay, so let's go over our pattern pieces. I have the front, just the back actually, of my pants drafted into a wide leg, as you can see here. I have the front. Now we won't be putting the pocket on this pattern. You can do it one of 2 ways. You can either draft the area that's missing for the pocket, or you could just add the pocket. I just pinned the pocket to it and just created that natural line. Now, as you can see, I have about 5/8 of an inch on the top of both the front and the back pieces, just to give it a little bit extra high waist feeling to it. I went ahead and disassembled my muslin, and I went ahead and cut my pieces out. So let's go ahead and review that. For the side front, which is the area on the side that we cut out, I went ahead and cut 4 pieces of this particular piece. So this gives you 2 for the front, 2 for the back. For the bodice piece, I went ahead and cut 2, and I included the seam allowance all the way around on the fold. So you're going to 2 on the fold for that piece. For the cross peplum for the top and the back, I went ahead and cut 4 pieces. So, and I cut all 4 of these pieces on the fold. So we have that. For the peplum piece here, I went ahead and cut 8 pieces out. This is because you're going to have 4 peplum pieces and you want them to have the double fold on them. So we're going to fold them and turn them inside out so we can have clean lines all through this jumpsuit. So 8 pieces for this. I went ahead and cut my facing that we drafted out for the side for the front side and back sides. You're going to cut 4 pieces of this. I went ahead and cut the facing for the top of the front and the back. So there's 2 on the fold. You can use, as I stated previously, you can use the top facing, the top peplum piece as your guide for those. I also went ahead and cut out 2 pieces of 2-inch straps for the actual straps on the jumpsuit. I made this 8 inches long, so it's 2 inches longer than my top peplum piece. So it's the same thing, just 2 inches longer, and I went ahead and cut that on the actual fold. The last thing you're going to need to do is create your sash. Now, I vary when it comes to my sashes. I'm going to create a sash that is about 40 inches long. So that gives me about, it's about 12 inches or so of hang. I don't want too much. So it's going to be 48 inches long by 4 inches. And I'm going to cut that on the fold, and I'm going to go ahead and sew around that. So we'll get to that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and start assembling our pieces. The first thing we're going to do is work on... As we start prepping for the construction of the skirt, the first thing you're going to do is work on the side peplums and the cross peplum on the top. You're going to take 2 of your pieces of your cross peplum, and you're going to sew them together on one end. Both ends are completely equal. You're going to press those seams open and fold it in half with right sides out, which I've done here. You're going to take your peplum and you're going to line this with the edge of the fabric and with your other peplum piece on top. And your peplum pieces are going to be right sides together. You're going to pin that. You do the same with this other one. And you're pinning these pieces on the inner edge of your peplum, not the curve edge, because that's the end that's going to be exposed and going to drape. So you're going to take the other piece here. So we have one. You're going to take this to the sewing machine. You're going to sew your seam across and around the curved edge and leave the inside open. Once you do that, you're going to do the same with the other side, pinning it between your peplum pieces, right sides together. And again, sew around the top and around the curved edge. So I'm going to do one at a time. I'm going to complete this piece. And then I'm going to add the other piece. Now I'm going to sew standard 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. I'm going to trim the seam allowance down. I'm going to fold that inside out and give it a really good press. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to come right back with both pieces attached and show you exactly what we have. And then also move on to the next step. Okay, so I have one side completed and I have it turned inside out. Right sides out. I'm going to go ahead and attach the other side. And you want to make sure you don't catch any of the cross peplum in your seam. So I have this. Now I took my top piece and I just turned it down because this is the end that's going to be exposed at the bottom. These matched up. And I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other side. I'm going to sew along the straight edge and around the curved edge of this peplum piece, making sure that this portion of the peplum is out of the way. We don't want that to get caught in the seams. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew this and we'll be right back and we'll start on the actual attachment of this piece to the bodice. Okay, so I have my other side attached. I'm going to cut down the seam allowance here. The corner and then along the curved edge. And I'm cutting this down to prevent any bulk once I turn this fabric inside out, or right sides out rather. Have that done. I can turn this inside out, or right side out. All the way down, and I'm just going to give it a really quick press. Making sure I have that seam right on the outside. So this is what we have, which is going to essentially be the front of the jumpsuit. So we're going to grab our bodice piece here. I'm just going to press this open. As you know, linen is very hard to keep iron from not being wrinkled. The first thing I'm going to do is attach the bodice to the top of the peplum piece. What I'm going to do is I am going to fold my cross peplum and the side peplum in about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to place it 5/8 of an inch away from the edge of the bodice. And I'm going to pin that there. Do the same thing with the other side. I'm going to fold this under, and what this does is give you that flat fold in the front. 1/4 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch from the edge. Now that I have that placed, I can align the top. And I'm going to take my facing piece, which I finished with my serger, and I'm going to line that up exactly with the bodice. And just give it a couple pins just to reinforce it. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that the peplum piece is out of the way. And there you have it. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to attach these two pieces. Once I do that, I'm going to press the seam towards the facing. I'm going to top stitch it along the facing side, and then I'm going to give it a good press. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and then we'll work on the next steps. Okay, so I have my pieces attached at the top here, and I went ahead and did the top stitching on the facing end. I'm just going to fold this over and give it a good press. And that's the front there. What I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be attaching the front sides to this. I'm going to line up my peplum piece here with my side piece. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. But you want to make sure you pin it along the edge. And because the peplum is 1/4 of an inch away, you have to get really creative with this top stitching at the top. So I'm just going to pin this around, making sure I'm getting all of my fabric here. Take that all the way down to the end. This particular piece is curved, so you're going to have to work your ease as you sew it. Alright, so there you have it. You have your side piece attached. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew down this seam, and I'm also going to go ahead and finish this seam with my serger. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other side, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is the facing for the armhole. Okay, so now that we have our front sides put together, we're going to go ahead and work on the last piece, which is the facing for the armholes. So I went ahead and pinned my left side. I'm going ahead and work on the right side now. And just pin this right sides together along the armhole. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to go ahead and do a 1/4 inch seam on both sides. Once I do that, I'm going to press the seam towards the facing, and then I'm going to go ahead and do another top stitch on top of that. So once I do that, I'll go ahead and fold it in. We'll be back and we'll start attaching the two pieces together. Okay, so now that we have the side fronts added to the bodice, the shirt is coming together, as you can see. So here's the peplum piece here, and this is how to have the natural drape with the slight fold at the top. I went ahead and pinned on my facing. Before I did that, I went ahead and finished the curved edge of the facing for both pieces and went ahead and pinned this to the side. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, do a 1/4 inch seam on both sides. I'm going to press the seam towards the facing and do another top stitch on that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so we have our facing attached. I went ahead and top stitched it and pressed it towards the inside. This is what you have here for your armholes. Looks much better than doing a hem. The next thing you're going to want to do is fold your fabric in and your facing on top of it. What this does is hides the raw edge where the arm was placed. I'm just going to pin that. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I am going to just do a very small, maybe about a 1/4 inch tap right there on both sides just to keep that down. And then we'll work on attaching the front to the back on one side, of course, because we have to put in that invisible zipper. Once we do that, we'll be able to move on to the pants, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so I went ahead and attached my front to my back at the side seam, which is going to be my right side, and my left side, and my right side is open. I went ahead and took my two strap pieces, and I went ahead and did a seam on both ends. I'm going to cut off the seam allowance. And I'm going to turn that inside out. Since I cut this on a fold, I'm going to have a clean edge at the end. I'm going to stick my scissors in here just to get that point out. Very gently. And I'm going to give it a good press. I'm going to do the same with the other. Turn that inside out, and then we'll get to those straps in just a moment here. Now we are ready to move on to the pants. So I'm just going to set this aside. I'm going to grab my pants. This is the easy part. Very easy to do this. I just need to make sure that I keep the right side open to connect with the top. I'm going to stick this aside. This is my front pieces. And then my back here. And I'm going to take my back pieces. I'm going to match it to the front. And I'm going to pin it from the crotch down. Matching up the edge there. I'm just going to go all the way down. Now, when I do my wide leg pants, I usually cut them about 50 inches. Now, my actual measurement with my heels on is about 46, 47 inches, depending on what shoes I have. But I always do it 50, just so I can determine, once I get the garment together, exactly how I want the hem to be. Sometimes I do a very thick hem, sometimes I do a short hem. Once I complete the actual garment, then I try it on with my shoes, and then I get a little bit of assistance, making the markings for where I want the hem to be. Once I do that, I go back to my table, I press it, give it a double fold, and hem the bottom, which I'll get to in just a moment here. I'm just prepping my pants legs. Make sure I have this, make sure I'm not creating two of the same leg. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to attach this, and then we're going to work on putting the front and back together. Putting both the left and right sides together, and then we'll be right back. So I'm going to go do this. Before I go to the sewing machine, I am going to go ahead and finish the edges of these pants because I want to make sure that it's serged, because linen frays a lot. So I'm going to do that and then put these sides together. Assembled. This is the front here, and this is the back. Easy peasy, front to back, front to back. Join them at the crotch seam all the way down, and then at the sides. Once you do that, you put the front and back together. We've done this 100 times, so I'll spare you the details. Now, if you notice, this pattern originally has a dart. 2 darts in the front, 2 darts in the back. We're not doing this because it's going to be sort of a loose fitting jumpsuit, and that's why we're going to have the sash. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the top to the bottom. Now if you notice too, when I did the top, I did not put any darts in the top as well. I just let the muslin naturally hang because that's the look that I'm going for this jumpsuit. So I'm starting here on the side seam, matching those together. This is my front piece. So I'm matching that up with the front of the jumpsuit. I'm just kind of going all the way over here. Start at the other end. Pin those together. See if I need to make room for any ease, which I don't, which is great. Alright, so I have the front pin. I'm going to work my way around to the back now. It's great when these two pieces come together perfectly, but if you don't for some reason and your top ends up being a little bit larger than your bottom, you can do one of two things. You can shorten it at the side seams of the top, or you can add a very small dart, depending on how big the top is, to the front and the back of the pants. This just so happened to work out perfect. This is the first time I've done this jumpsuit in this manner, especially draping the top, and it actually fits correctly. So which means I did have my measurements correct on my dress form, and everything works out without the darts. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I have my right sides together. I'm going to sew all the way around. Then we can start prepping for the zipper. Now, if you see on my pants, I only have about a 3-inch opening because without the darts, it's very easy to slip these pants on. So I don't have to go as far down as I normally would with this pattern with the actual darts. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to put these two pieces together, and then we'll get to working on the next thing, which is the zipper. Okay, so we have our top and our bottom attached at the waistline. The next thing we need to do is attach the invisible zipper. Now, I went ahead and did a basting stitch on from the top where the armhole is at on the side down to where I want my zipper to stop, which is 3 inches below the waistline. I went ahead and put a pin there so I can know exactly where I want my zipper to stop. I'm going to go just below that area and put a pin here so I can hold that zipper in place. And I'm just going to pin the right side of this zipper. Move that over just a little bit. And I'm just going to pin this along the edge. Now, I wasn't able to find the exact color of this zipper, and I didn't have time to actually order one online. So because I'm doing an invisible zipper, I'm hoping I can get away with this and it won't be visible at all, especially with it being on the side. Alright, so I have my zipper pinned along the edge of the seam allowance on the right side. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew from the top to where my zipper stops. I'm going to then start from the bottom of the left side and work my way to the top. This makes sure that I have my zipper aligned. I'm going to pin it on the left side once I get this down. And then we'll be able to move on to the shoulder straps. So in between the time of me putting these two together, I went ahead and tried my jumper on, and it fits great. I went ahead and did measurements for the shoulder straps, and I only need 4 inches. So I went ahead and cut down my shoulder straps. I need 3 inches, but I cut a 4-inch strap. We're going to go ahead and do the zipper, and then we'll move on to attaching the shoulder strap and then making the actual buttonhole for it as well. So I'll do that and we'll come back. We're almost done. So we have our zipper attached to the pants. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove this basting stitch. I'm just going to remove the excess threads. I'm going to open the zipper. I'm going to cut it about 1/2 inch from the top on both sides. I am going to open my seam, fold that zipper down, and then fold that zipper in. I'm going to put a pin there. I'm just going to tack it right there at the top. I'm going to do the same with the other side. Fold it down, fold it in. And put a pin there. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and tack these. About 1/4 inch tack at the top just to keep that zipper in place. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to do that, and then we're going to move over to the shoulder straps. Okay, so now that we have our zipper attached, which is here, we need to start working on the shoulder straps. So I have my shoulder straps attached to the back. What you're going to want to do is you want to flip the cross peplum up, and you're going to want to attach the shoulder straps through the facing in the front. You can see the stitches in the front here, but once you put the garment on and it folds down, then that part is invisible. We're using the same similar tactic for the front. So for the front, you're going to flip up the flap, and you're going to make your buttonholes, which I've done here. I just need to open them up. And again, this is under the flap, so the button is not going to be visible. But you have to make sure that you put it through the facing, because you don't want to have a weak structure or one level of fabric between your button and the rest of the garment. It's going to look really wonky, and you don't want that. So I have my buttonholes open. The only thing I need to do now is go ahead and attach my buttons. So I want to hear the other ones on the machine. So I'm going to attach these buttons and finish off the shoulders, and then I am going to move over to hemming this particular garment. Now, I typically don't cover hemming on my videos because it's a little bit of a process for me. What you will need to do is you will need to go ahead and put on your garment. I typically do this with my garment insides out. I do that because once I have someone help me determine exactly what that length is, I have them pin it for me, and then I don't have to reverse it when I take the garment off. I can press and then go from there. So I'm not going to cover the hemming. I never do that. It's a little bit of a process for me, and it's pretty late here tonight. So I'm going to do that, and then we're done. So I'm going to put this on, put these buttons on. I'm going to get my hems together, and this is pretty much done. So there you have it, guys. Our jumpsuit is complete. The only thing you need to do now is to create your sash. I went ahead and created a sash, which is 48 inches long, which is 20 inches longer than my waist. I didn't want a super long sash in the front. The inspiration picture that I was working on had a short one as well. So I created this 48 inches with the half triangle sides. I want you to challenge yourself. I want you to step outside the norm. I want you to do what's uncomfortable for you. This will make you a better seamstress and ultimately make you a better designer. This is something that can gateway into becoming a pattern designer on your own, or being able to drape patterns that you may not have a commercial pattern to follow by. I want you to be sure to visit www.needlesandfashion.com. Be sure to visit www.fabricmartfabrics for all of your fabric needs. Fabric Mart Fabrics also has a Facebook page. And if you like their Facebook page, you get a 10% off coupon. I have a page as well, Janice Johnson of Needles and Fashion, and I also have a sewing group on Facebook, which is also called Needles and Fashion. It's an amazing group of sew sisters and sew brothers that support each other, help you find patterns for your inspiration, give you useful tips, and help you along the way. Until then, this is Janice with Needles and Fashion. Remember, be bold and never regular. Good night.